gonna try to keep the mob to about 5 people, and what we can do is rotate people in as they become available, like yourself. Thank you very much for joining. But what I'd like to do is to get started and explain the fundamental rules of this particular style of mobbing. It's a little bit different than something you might have experienced if you've done mob programming before. For starters, rather than using a timer with an arbitrary period of time, we'll do it event-based, which will sort of focus us on getting back to green real fast, because the event will be get to green. So we'll write a test in traditional TDD fashion. We'll fail the test. Then we'll make whatever code is demanded into existence by that test, and we'll get to green. And it might take one step, and it might take more than one if we're getting clumsy. So that's the rotation. The next navigator, and this will have a pilot navigator, everyone's allowed to talk to the one navigator at a point, and that navigator is the only person that the current driver needs to listen to, because they get to choose from however many suggestions there are about what should happen next, whether it should be refactoring or whether it should be another test to force new behavior. The current navigator makes that decision. The driver gets to this, and the navigator has to talk to the driver at the level that they can execute on, to state intention, not try to give keystroke for keystroke, right? That's the idea. The rotation occurs when you get to green, and the next navigator gets to make the decision: do we refactor or do we write another test? Are there any questions on this process for doing the rotation? I'll take that as a no. So, Mark, would you do us a huge favor?
Yes.
Could you please write down in some fashion the order in which you see our faces appearing here, so that that will be the order in which we rotate?
Okay. You mean as you come up to code?
Yes, exactly. And
is it okay if I put it in the Twitch chat?
I'm not running the Twitch other than in the background. Probably if you just can call it out and you can provide that function, sort of like what it would be for a timekeeper.
Sure.
And then we can rotate that at any point if you put it into the Zoom chat.
Okay.
Yeah, the Zoom chat would probably work.
Okay.
Yeah. And chances are what we'll do is we'll actually incorporate that into a source code in the program that we're looking at, so that we can see it anytime. That'll keep it simple. And then we'll adjust it as we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do, a couple of other things. The platform that we're going to use is my all-time favorite because it is frictionless and because it offers so many options. I'm going to use Cyber Dojo for those of you who have never experienced it. It's an entirely browser-based system that happens to provide version control, color, syntax highlighting in 30 different languages, all of which have multiple testing frameworks. And all of the languages that have a Cucumber implementation, it has the Cucumber test framework as well, regardless of what it may be called. So, Cyber Dojo. Eddie, would you please bring up Cyber Dojo and share your screen?
I can do that.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to look at the chat now that I've got that open. I'm only seeing. Can you put that into the chat again, Mark? Because I didn't open it until just now. I only see 2 entries there. I don't see anything that looks like a list of names. I just see Eddie.
So my understanding of the task was to list a name as they become a speaker.
No, the whole list as you see them presented in a particular order.
Oh, got it. I'm sorry. Okay.
Not an issue. All right. So everyone in Twitch land should probably be seeing something called Cyber Dojo, and the URL is quite simple. It's cyber-dojo.org. It's a free to use for non-companies. You can see that there's a please donate thing, and more specifically, there's a commercial use of cyberdojo.org requires a license. I wanted to get that out there because what these people do is not only support the running of Cyber Dojo, but they buy Raspberry Pis for school kids. So the way we're going to start is, would you please click on I'm on my own?
Oh, sorry. Too click happy.
And what you see here is a list of choices. Create a new exercise, create a new custom exercise, or rejoin an exercise. We could get to that at some point, but right now I just want to get to the good part. So how about we create a new exercise? And I'm going to suggest not that we do something quite as brain dead as FizzBuzz or FizzBuzz Plus. Is everyone okay with doing, say, the tennis kata, which I know Eddie at least has some direct experience with it in the last 24 hours.
The refactoring one, Bob.
Hey,
Yeah, let's actually do the refactoring one. Do we have to do the custom exercises to go down that path?
Now, you want to do Cucumber, right?
I do want to do Cucumber, and that one doesn't have that framework, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm not sure refactoring is a good use case for BDD.
You're right. So let's just do the tennis kata this way. And next, because we can read the directions after we get there. And this is sample code of the code that you are given, which is always the same. We don't want to do C, I don't think. Let's do Java and Cucumber, please. These are, by the way, in alphabetical order, you might notice. Up at the very top, not spring. There you go. All right.
There's quite a list to go through.
Yeah, for Java, it has quite a few testing frameworks. It's kind of nice that way.
Well, even languages. You can definitely find a language that you know here.
So here we have, yeah, definitely 30 different languages, including some fairly esoteric ones. Bash is there. Never mind. I won't even go down that road. Okay.
so we got a new computer tonight set up here for streaming because unfortunately Canton Coders looks like it's an online thing for a bit. So if you want to help out with this video editing process, follow us on Twitter and give me a shout. I do appreciate Bob Allen doing this tonight. Thanks.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love doing this stuff. So looking at the instructions, which is in the README text file, your task is to implement a tennis scoring program. And there's only 4 instructions. It seems so simple. How can that be? So let us begin with the feature file. And we're going to get this to green pretty quickly. I'm thinking that we need to indent lines 3 through 5. Anyone have a differing opinion? Do the same thing for that? Now, here's the reason for that. This is one of the topics I wanted to cover.
Yeah, that makes me much happier, actually. Thank you.
Good. The reason this is important is because the hierarchy matters, not the way it matters in Python or Perl or one of those indent-specific languages, but because if, for instance, right now, Eddie, you were to get rid of the colon after the word feature and make it no longer a keyword, watch what happens to everything inside of it. It goes away. The linter says, that's not a scenario because it's not inside a feature. So if you put the colon back, do the same thing to the colon on the word scenario. Watch what happens to the steps. They're no longer steps when they're not part of a scenario. That's one of the reasons that the hierarchy matters. Another reason it matters is for something called tagging, which we'll get to, I hope, later. The tagging only applies at the level of the hierarchy that you are currently placing the tag on. A tag in front of the feature keyword says it applies to everything inside the feature. A tag between, say, 2 and 3 would be only to that scenario. Yes. Versus there, exactly. And that is the way that you would apply it, and that's what it would look like. Thank you, Eddie. So you may notice, those of you who are new to CyberDojo, that there's a scent of Douglas Adams in the air with this code that we're starting with. Hitchhiker playing Scrabble in the past, the hitchhiker selects some tiles, all of this hitchhiker stuff, and of course the expected answer is 42. So yes, this is references to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Why don't we go ahead and just run this right now, sight unseen, and see if it does something kind of close to what we think it says it's doing.
Real quick, we had a request to increase the font size.
Let us do that then.
Speaking of that, we're a live stream, which means if you want to jab at people in the mob, have any suggestions, drop it in Twitch, drop it in Slack, hit it on Twitter, call Brian's cell phone. We love feedback.
Hey, can you post that cell phone number for the?
It's 8675309.
I got that once when I was single.
It took me a second.
Yeah. Very good. So what we're seeing here, as articulated on, I think it's line 24 and also on line 8, is you told me to expect 42, but I actually got 54. But you'll also notice, look up on line 1. It's our old friend JUnit. This cucumber stuff is actually using JUnit under the covers. How sneaky. So let's actually get this sucker to green. Let's actually just go to the hiker.java file and see if there's anything interesting there. Looks like it's just doing multiplication with a rather poorly named set of variables called LHS for left-hand side and RHS for right-hand side, and it multiplies them together and returns it. I don't think there's going to be any happiness here. Now can we go back to the feature file? And since we know that the answer must be 42 because this is Douglas Adams' space, what can we do to line 4 perhaps to make it produce 42? Mobbers. I'm picking 6 times 7, 1 times 42, 2 times 21, any of those would do. Would you please run the test again? And this is what we get when you have 2 check-ins, the first check-in of which compiled, which is a red dot versus a yellow dot, and the second test of which not only compiled, but the test also ran. This is what you see, and this is what CyberDojo has taught us by making us go through this exercise. This is what it looks like when it runs to completion but fails, and this is what it looks like when it runs to completion and it succeeds. So now we're going to actually do some real coding. And since I got to green and I said we were going to switch on the event of getting to green, I think that if I'm not mistaken, thank you, that Eddie, you were the driver, I was the navigator, I guess I become the next driver, and this is going to be a demonstration of how we switch. Do folks think that here in the United States that we're going to be able to hand around? No, we won't be able to, because whoever you take control from won't be Eddie. It'll be the guy who actually started this this Zoom session. So that would be really great that someone would be controlling your browser.
Well, I actually do have permission to auto accept all requests. I think that because I'm sharing that we could do that. I'm glad to try it. I shared only my browser.
In this mechanism, because there's two different approaches to do. Let's do it the simplest way that could possibly work. Eddie is currently the one that's driving, and he's set up to automatically accept a control request. So I think James, or no, let's see. Yeah, James, would you please request control of the screen and whatever it is that Eddie is sharing, which I think is just the browser. Let's find out if you can control that.
James, after you make your request, you're going to want to click on the screen with your mouse.
Yeah, you actually have to click on the screen you're seeing in order to activate it. I see a new cursor. Is that you, James?
So this is my lovely wife, Dana.
James Simon is controlling your screen.
Yep.
James?
Okay.
All right.
Yep. I got it.
Perfect. So,
So what do you want me to do?
So who's our new navigator?
well, you are.
Oh, I'm the navigator?
No, that'll go back and forth indefinitely. I was functioning as navigator and you were driving, so James actually should be, let's see, James, you're the driver now. Dan Davis, that makes you the navigator because that'll make you the next driver.
Can I make a quick suggestion here before we get too deep? We had said, I believe previously, Bob, that we were going to list out the mobbers in the order and control the handover in a text file. Maybe this is a good time to do that.
Oh, let's tell you what. So, James, do you see in the Zoom chat the entry that was put in there by Mark that has?
Yeah. He's actually got 2 entries, but yeah.
So why don't you copy that into the feature file? First of all, select the hiker.feature if you would, and then we can see where to put that. The menu, the list of files is over on the left, just like it is in most IDEs.
Yep.
Click on that one.
Feature. Yep.
So how about if you insert the list of names, because it won't bother anybody to do that between, no, not there, between lines, what used to be the feature in the scenario phase. Because that's the safe territory. Anything that doesn't have to start with a purple keyword is safe territory. Cucumber will ignore it.
Right.
And
so go pick them up in the chat.
I'm noticing that you
know
are.
What? It does not like that. It does not like. It doesn't want to take the paste.
I'm on a Mac, so it's Windows key V if you're on a Windows machine.
But that's. I think I just got your.
I think you're right.
Yep. So if you copy it, I can paste it in.
Yeah. Hold on just a second. Bob, you are missing from this list.
It's okay. Put me on the bottom then.
And there should be two separate lists that you'll need.
Right.
I don't know why it formatted it like that, but it's there.
Let's make it vertical.
Yep. I can do that once he's got it in.
Yeah. When I did that, James, it's back to waiting for you to control, so you're going to have to click again.
All right.
I'll let you format it to your desire.
Are we missing folks, or do we have everybody? Is this the whole list?
I
thought there were 2 separate lists of people.
There are
there's the continuation list of everybody else that's currently in. I think we can nix off the couple Canton coders because that's Joel doing the production work. So we've got
the top of the list, and when we get back to my name, we'll bring in somebody new. So put me up on line 5, please.
On line 5. All right. That's Bob.
Okay, and now we are at 5, which is the ideal mob size. And then when we get down to the bottom, we'll bring in another mob.
All right.
Okay.
Do we want to designate the current driver and navigator and use this as our placeholder? So that
Yes, if you please create some white space at the beginning of 5 through 9 and put in a N for navigator and a D for driver. Since you're the driver, put a D next to your name. No, white space on the left margin.
Yeah, on the left margin.
Next to the names, not above them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next to the names. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that a person is being designated as who the current navigator or driver is.
Yep.
So Daniel will be the navigator for right now. Get rid of those or use them as you wish.
All right. So we have a navigator in Daniel.
Correct?
And a driver in me.
Correct.
All right. Okay.
And the rotation will move down so that Daniel will become the next driver and Brian will become the next navigator and so on.
All right.
All right.
So good question here. As I navigate, let me pick the brains of the collective crew, and even from your perspective here, Bob. In other perspectives or other, how do I phrase it? Testing dynamics outside of BDD, we might shoot for the simplest thing from a code and or testing perspective. So facing a similar variation of this kata with other challenges in Cyber Dojo, having faced the answer to life, the universe, and everything in multiple ways, there's the idea of getting to that in the simplest way. I've noticed our line 15 in our scenario is a when dynamic that says they spell 6 times 7. Now, we've known, and again, hints from other places, 6 times 7 produces some logic. There's the idea like we're having to compute something to get to our answer to 42. Question in the context of BDD, and since we're all about learning BDD today, do we try to bring in the simplest dynamic from a test and code perspective, or are we more about testing functionality or the root need in a sense versus the others? So open context there to the fellow supporting navigators before I have James drive in any direction. I wanted to get a little perspective there.
So are you asking about, I think you might be, or hinting at spelling a multiplication problem as opposed to computing or something to that effect? Because we've got this sort of mixed mode where it's tiles that are typically used for spelling stuff in Scrabble, and then doing an operation. So I don't know this scene out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So anybody else's insights would be helpful.
I don't know this scene, but from my perspective, Daniel, this is just the thing that Cyber Dojo gives us to have a failing test to start with and to validate that the testing framework is working. Generally, what I do with it in all cases is just to move on to whatever my kata is. And once I get the first one of those passing, I remove this.
But I was going to go there. Like, isn't this supposed to be about tennis? And not as much as I love the Hitchhiker's Guide, we can keep going with it. But I thought the kata was about tennis.
And I don't disagree. So as a navigator here, I wanted to take an opportunity to call out a learning moment that I normally bring into a kata perspective when working with the team. Right? And this in a standard Java and JUnit perspective, 6 times 7 to get us to 42. The simplest context of getting to 42 is not multiplying 6 times 7. It's returning the number 42. So that's where I was challenging our thoughts on, in a BDD perspective, are you more after getting the simplest thing, regardless of the focus here, and or are you after, asserting the dynamic of again, the functionality? So it's just a challenge there. Wanted to play it out. I'm absolutely totally cool with shifting our focus to the right need, but wanted to take a potential opportunity to discuss that and, how this from a BDD perspective might be different than what we're testing from a pure, unit-driven perspective or even TDD dynamic.
Well, I'm sort of interested in staying focused on and displaying as many of the features of Cucumber Gherkin as we can. And I think the best way we can make that entertaining, personal opinion, is by getting to the tennis problem, because it's more interesting than a made-up thing from Hitchhiker.
Yep, fair enough.
Right. So should
Cool.
we make it a new feature file?
I think that it's just going to question, do we need a new feature file, or can we add more scenarios?
We can do any of a number of things, including shaping the current feature file and all the rest of the code into what we need. Remake it in the image of our intention.
Yep. So I would suggest here we're gonna change a few things, and there's the idea here of also refactoring to green, right? We want to hold true to that. I'm sure that doesn't change from BDD to TDD. And in order to change some stuff at a highest level here and in a sense keep us at green, I personally think if we're changing the feature around, we're changing the scenarios around, in essence, our tests are being altered to the right need, our naming is off. So I might suggest, Jace, that our first thing here is, if you notice over on the left side there in our files perspective, we have the opportunity to rename some of those files. You can also create new and delete stuff if you ever needed it, but really we're going to deal with the files we've already got here. So hiker.feature, yeah, doesn't mean much to me. Let's maybe it's tennis.feature. Cool. So ideally, there's a theory that we would click, well, let me ask the other navigators support here. Should we just go ahead and fell swoop change all the things, or do we want to go step by step using some scenarios?
On the test.
I like it, Bob. Let's go ahead and hit test. We changed something, let's see what happens.
Relatively cheap. Not as cheap as it would be on your desktop, but it's relatively cheap.
Yep. Okay, so we noticed, this didn't impact too much. We're still at a green state. That's okay. Assuming you guys want to get this stuff cleaned up, we'll push forward. Let's go ahead and change some of our other things as well. Our hiker step def. Let's take a quick glance at that guy, see what that's doing for us. All right, it's driving out some of the needs of us, identifying what our appropriate callouts are with the given, when, and then scenarios. So let's get this guy to also be renamed. So let's rename that to tennis step def.
For what it's worth, you could call this simply step definitions, and it would work just fine. It doesn't have to be in lockstep with anything else, unless we wish it to be.
Fair enough. I like things to be in lockstep. Does anybody disagree?
No.
You're doing fine.
And so does Java, by the way. Java likes things to be in lockstep.
That is true. Okay, so we changed a thing. Let's run the test. So now we're to yellow. We broke something, right? We're no longer compiling. So, all right. So if we take a glance there, all right, probably maybe line 5. Need to clean up the name there. Let's change hiker to tennis. Run the test, see what we get. All right. We went to yellow, but quickly back to green. I like it. You want to hold true to your modifying and swapping out there, Bob, since we're back to green, or do we want to focus on getting these names cleaned up? That kind of feel like events.
I like to keep it nice and short, get lots of rotation going. That'll allow us to draw in additional people. I was waiting for someone that's in the wings to call it out.
All right, I'm giving up remote control then.
Okay. And while we're looking at it, obviously, Brian, you're going to be the next navigator, and Dan, you're going to be the next driver. So you're going to get to make some green.
All right, I just requested. I'm clicking in to hopefully do some driving.
Yep, you got it. So, which way is this shifting?
Down.
Yeah, so Brian Finster is the next navigator.
Yeah, so I'm the next navigator. Let's go look at the requirements.
Well, let's update the
Can
list.
we update the list first to keep it up to date? Driver, who's driving?
This is test output.
Daniel's
D
driving.
by Daniel, N by Brian.
Yeah, there we go.
Actually, I have to go to the file, not the test output.
Oh, and hey, just because I didn't see it, did someone post a link to the website in the chat somewhere? Did I miss it?
Yeah,
we're current.
Put that in the chat. It's up at the top.
Yeah, and if that's better, that makes sense. But as of right now, I thought we were just remote controlling Eddie's.
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
If I am in, which is interesting, I can click the mouse around,
Hey,
but I try
Daniel,
to type things and I can't type.
you're in standard out, which is probably a read-only file. If you go over to the feature file,
Well, that might make sense. Thank you, sir. Thank you for supporting my inability to know what the heck I'm doing. All right.
it takes a
So,
team. That's why we have a mob.
10, yep, tennis dot feature. There you go.
awesome. Hey, look, it works.
okay. There we go.
It works if you type.
The IDE in here can use a little bit of help.
Just a little support.
It is
Yeah,
rather basic.
fair enough. All right, we're cleaned up there.
Close enough.
Brian, where are we going?
So let's go look at the requirements. All right, so the first scenario we have is that the game is won by the first player to have won at least 4 points in total and at least 2 points more than the opponent. So because I hate going back and forth, can you just copy that bullet point 1 and paste it over in the feature file? Let's try making it a scenario.
I'm gonna try the whole copy paste thing. We'll see if it works there, Eddie.
And I don't know how the remote control thing is working, so that'll be interesting when I'm driving. Just throwing that out there.
I don't know if you're looking for input, Brian, but
I always accept input. I'm great at input.
and redirecting to dev null.
Yes, exactly. It's like, thank you for your input.
Look
I
at
was-
that. What do you have to say?
I was simply going to remark that this might not be that when we're doing TDD, we want to think about not just grabbing the first scenario, but trying to pick the one that has the smallest impact on the production code and try to work them in that order. This one,
we're delivering in like 6 months, so it doesn't matter.
no, we got to ship today. At least twice.
I love
So
it.
what Eddie might be referencing is the fact that if you have to get all the way to 4 points, there's a lot of stuff that you got to do before you get there.
Well, okay, so we can go back up. We didn't have a lot of time going through the actual, all of the requirements, or at least I did not. And then we kind of got into refactoring before we got into the requirements, right? So first person to get to at least 4 points, get to 4 points and 2 points ahead wins. The running score of each game is described in a manner I think that's later. If at least 3 points have been scored, hang on, this is in my way, by each player, then the score is equal. And if at least 3 points have been scored by each side of a player, then 1 point, then it's
So for what it's worth, Brian, I'm suggesting that maybe number 2 is going to be a good place to start because it starts at the beginning.
number 2, is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure, let's go with that. Okay.
Interesting. The linter likes those chorded strings.
So, so the first scenario we need a scenario to print
We need a
Yeah,
feature.
the way that I typically do BDD is not quite this way, so this could be interesting, Bob.
So what would be even simpler than that?
I'm sorry.
What's the score when no one's played?
What's the score? I don't know tennis. What is the score? Zero.
0-0.
Yeah, so there's 0. Yeah, when there are no scores.
We could start sort of like when you
Actually,
haven't put any
navigator.
money in the vending machine kind of thing. In other words, it's the initial.
Yeah, so the scenario is when the score is 0. So let's try that. You know, my dog's been really quiet all evening. All right.
How would you articulate the given then?
Now the fun thing about Gherkin is there's like a million ways to do it. So, given the score is 0,
Given the match has started and the score is 0.
oh well, we could say given the match.
Given
is
the
0.
match has started, and then you have a win. If you say given the score is 0, then you don't need a win because your win would be the score.
Well,
is
I mean,
0.
win's optional. All right.
It is.
So Mob, what do I do when the navigator has a backseat driver?
Sorry.
How do I handle that? Welcome, Dana, by the way. Hi, how are you?
Well, we're all backseat drivers.
Hey, Dana.
Yes,
You
exactly.
should pay attention to your navigator only.
Okay. All right. I'm only Brian focused.
So, given the current context, which is the match, given we have a tennis match, so given the match has started. Oh my goodness. Right?
Is
Started.
that the right name for the scenario? I mean, so given the match has started,
Hey,
when the score is 0-0, right?
we can refactor the scenario later.
So perhaps a given of the match has not begun, which is plays off of what you've got.
Well, I mean, if the match has not begun, then there's no real test.
Hmm. I think in terms of
There we go.
what,
I think
what's,
Bob's breaking his own rules. All right.
who actually knows some tennis? What do you call the guy who calls out the score?
The line umpire.
I like hockey.
So line
Line
umpire-
ref? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
so we could say something like, given we have a line umpire, which would allow us to instantiate an object or something like that, for instance.
Given the I didn't hear what you said.
Given we have a line umpire, which is the guy who announces the score that we are constructing.
You know, we're going to go with it because for the sake of the audience, but we'd have a longer discussion if this was a story.
Bob, you may have seeded your starting collection of folks here in inversely supporting dynamics, just saying. But I like it. So what do you want me to have there, Brian? Given...
I'm just going to, so the context is not that we have a line judge. You don't need a line judge to play tennis. You know, you need a tennis match. So
Line judge to call out the score.
you do not, because if Dana and I, were we to play tennis, went to
How about
go tennis,
given that no one has scored?
Given that no one has
yes,
scored.
given that
yes.
no one has, well, okay, then we don't need the win,
Yeah.
but that's fine.
You
Given
don't
that no
need
one
a
has scored,
given
it's
at
fine.
all.
Given that no one has scored,
You don't need a given.
You
well,
have to have a given. You don't have to have a
so
win.
technically you need a then, and you need a given or a win. You don't
So
always.
I would say start with the then and work backwards and see what you need.
Yeah, start with the outcome. No, he's right. That's actually a thing.
Absolutely. It's easier. Otherwise, you do a lot of stuff, that you don't end up needing.
Okay, so you're saying start with 40?
The score is 0 to 0. 0-0.
Say in tennis, is it 0 or is it 0-0?
What's going on?
What's the score going to look like? I think maybe it's going to look like an ASCII string. What do you think?
It's going to be love all.
Yeah.
It has to be a string, right? If sometimes it's a number and sometimes it's love.
Yes.
Well, when
Represents
scores
zero.
when the score is announced, you're going to hear things like love, 15, 30, 40, deuce, advantage player 1, advantage player 2.
Okay, all right, hang on. We're not getting anywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to say delete the given.
Okay.
Yep, we're going to delete the given. Because this is a very simple test, and we don't need the entire world to exist before we go and test it. All right. When the score is 0,
Then the score is low.
How about when they start the game?
nope. When the score is 0,
Navigator has set a course, allow it to play out
no, put the number 0.
the digit.
Thank you. And delete everything after that.
On that line.
Then the score will be described as love.
When which player has a score of 0?
No, there's nothing about players here. This is a test just about scoring. So when the score is 0, then the score will be described as love.
Ryan, the score is always described in terms of what each player's score is and how they compare. That's the nature of announcing the score in a tennis match.
Yeah,
I don't know how to play tennis. I'm reading the requirements the business gave me.
I like it.
But it still makes sense because it would be love 15, love 40, love. The only time that the weirdnesses come in is when you get to deuce.
I think George had an observation about what this would be called if it was a professional match and it's been announced, and it would be
Love all.
That's right.
We have multiple.
So when the score is 0-0, the score is described as love all.
That is correct.
Hey guys.
Navigator, do you agree?
I don't know anything about tennis. All I have is the business requirements in front of me.
But when we write the test to evaluate the score, so if one player 1 score is 0, player 2 score is 0, we can still use this as a test of score.
Yep.
And then depending on more complex logic later, if the score is 0, then you have, because it's still love all or love 15, depending on that. But I think that's evaluated later on, and that this is the simplest form, is to say score 0, score is described as love.
And by the way, Brian,
More complex logic, taking into account 2 players.
we didn't read it, but there is supplementary requirements attached to that about tennis scoring.
Hey, real quick, while we're at about the halfway point. I got some good questions from Twitch chat, so if someone on stream could keep their eye on the Twitch chat. I'm also getting feedback on Slack that none of you know sports, and hopefully you're not paid by the hour.
Hey, I know how icing works.
And before everyone leaves, because we're not writing any code, I just want to invite you to April 22nd, where we promise to write code and not debate tennis. But this is going great.
Debate tennis. We're better to debate tennis than in Canton Coders. Come on.
Yeah, so it's going to become the enterprise architecture of the world.
So
I've never seen a tennis match in my life.
Can we run with this?
Yes, let's say it run and see what happens.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's the point too, so we just
The
want
point is to demonstrate how Cucumber processes English into something you can code.
And the other recommendation is they saw a lot of faces at the beginning, but we kind of have just a couple people conversing.
Well, we're trying to get to green.
What?
We're trying to get to green so we can rotate.
Oh, we're still running. This is why middle managers don't like TDD.
Yes. So I'm expecting is we don't have a step definition for this. So what do we have? Undefined scenarios. So the question I have is that many Cucumber implementations will auto-generate stubs. Does this do that? So let's go look at
line 29.
Do what?
Look at line 29 in the output.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Line 29. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we need to cut and paste lines 29 through 33 into the step definitions.
replacing the then that is there.
Replacing all that?
Just insert it anywhere. Yeah, just delete all of that. There you go. And then just hit insert. We're missing a win somewhere. Can you go back to the stated out?
Yeah, I don't know where that went. Because it was magically there somehow.
Where is the win? I see the then.
It would normally be all together.
Yeah. Well, we can implement the then and then see if the win shows up when the test fails. Keep scrolling down.
Nope. Run it.
Weird. Usually it's all there. Okay, so go to the step definitions and let's go look at that.
Let's actually just run it and it'll give it to us.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks, Bob. I'm used to this stuff just kind of working. Pending?
Okay, it's busy throwing a pending. Here's a shortcut to get closer to our target. Go to the step defs and delete the throw pending and the comment. Because any step def that doesn't throw an error is a success.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Right.
One of the little known secrets about the way Cucumber operates, if it doesn't throw an error, it must be good.
Slightly misleading. So you want a line 11 and 12 gone?
Delete that.
And run the test.
Hey Bob, what are the chances we can get some of those new faces wrapped in? I keep on seeing these pictures, but my ratings are telling me that the people on the screen are really not good for retention.
All right. Well, copy the win in there, and we can struggle around with this, or we can swap people out and then just help each other and have fewer debates.
Brian, our goal is currently to get to green, so you and I we're going to do whatever it takes, man.
Are we? All right. Well, we're in this together. Let's hit it then. So right above the thens, insert that win.
Good. Or thereabouts.
All right.
And get rid of the throws exception and we will get to green.
That would do it.
Through the magic of total BS code that works or doesn't break anyway.
It works at doing a whole lot of nothing, which I've seen plenty of code do in the real world.
Yeah, but it does it well.
It's so good. It's green.
Hey, we're passing. Ship it.
Some of the feedback from the Twitch chat is it red light, green light, get lunch, take a nap, refactor?
I mean, it's coffee, like restroom break.
Yes.
And
right. So
then eventually you're going to refactor it.
We're going to run this like a fish bowl. So we've got so many seats, and when someone joins us from the audience, whoever is next, the mob decides who's off. So I'm off the rotation. And
Eddie, go for it.
So let's get to honest. Let's try to get to honest.
I'm good for. I like honest.
So as a start, let's go to let me see. Go back to the feature file for a second.
All right.
Okay. I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but we do have the scores described as love. So let's look at the step def. We could. I'm looking at the step def and thinking about how I always want for every scenario for things to get refreshed. And I'm looking at this, and normally, very often where I would do that is by using the given as sort of an indicator that I should refresh things, but we don't have a given. And so I think I'd like to have a given that says, given a new game of tennis, and let's run this, and we're going to have a little bit of work to do on the step definitions, I think. Okay.
So notice again, line 30 to 33 is a gift.
Trying to grab it. It's being very slow.
I'm on a Mac, Brian. So if you're on a Windows machine,
Windows, bite your tongue.
okay, good man.
Yeah.
You should not have keyboard problems, other than maybe a little bit.
If I had a new Mac, I'd have keyboard problems, but I don't, so we're good. All right. Anyway, enough of my editorializing.
So Eddie, are we going to replace that throws, which we know the outcome from, with something intelligent?
I'm waiting for the driver to get to a place that he can take some more input.
Go ahead.
So let's, if we could, just below line 7, let's declare a new tennis game.
On line 7?
Right under it. If you just hit enter there, and let's declare, I would declare it as private. That's a Java convention for class members.
Let's see. Crap. It's tennis. It's so verbose.
So you're specifying a type, and in Java we start types with capital letters.
Thank you. Yeah,
Pascal case.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's going to need a name.
Oh yeah.
I'm good with that. But let's delay the initialization if we could. And let's do the initialization. So you're going to have to terminate that with a semicolon, because this isn't JavaScript. It's a terminator, not a separator. And then in place of the exception on line 13, let's initialize the value of game there to a new game.
You're either going to need a link for or
I'm sorry?
from a game there.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, it helps if I spell it correctly. All right, here we go.
And can we just kill that dead comment? And yeah. Okay. And let's see. So now that we have a game, what I would want to do here is to tell the game that players have scored something, right? Because this is outside in. You could look at this as some people have heard about Chicago and London style.
Yep.
We're doing London style, and so we're testing through the public interface. I'm confused at how I'm going to do that here.
Shouldn't you also create 2 players?
Yeah.
And then declare their scores as arguments 1 and 2?
Should we?
Don't exist without players.
I mean, that's kind of an existential question. Philosophy might be outside the scope of the requirements.
So we actually can't score without the names of the players. We can't say what a score is. We could right now. We actually don't have to have the names right now until we get up above 3 points. Yeah, we would never do that because the meter would break our fingers. But more than that, it's not very good Java.
Have I mentioned that I don't code Java very frequently?
I believe it has been mentioned, yeah.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here. And I'm going to say that we're probably going to have to adjust. I probably should have done it all at the same time. I was really trying to use what was there and then refactor. But I think that the score needs to, we need to express in terms of points of one person versus another one.
Okay.
Can we skip the main part for now and just say the score is n to n? which will get us closer, and then we can screw around with names if we want to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I was heading. So I really do think that we need to change this in the scenario.
Can we actually change that here, because it's not that hard to do? The regex is pretty straightforward, and we can change them in both places and not have to wait for the gift from Cucumber.
Yeah. So on line 15, if just before the $sign, if we say space or space, not or, to, T-O, and then copy that parenthetical regex thing, yep, and put it right before the $sign.
Come on, move.
Using tennis knowledge, you really don't do that.
And yeah, we're just talking about points at this time. There's nothing Tennessee about that.
No. But I mean, in terms of the way scores are typically rendered.
Absolutely.
It's really server. It's really the server and the receiver, and the server score always comes first.
We're not going to encumber ourselves with that complication.
But that's easier. Because then you don't need names.
And so far, we haven't violated that, and it's simple, and we're trying to get to something that actually has something like meaning.
So, so we actually don't need that right now. We don't need to do anything with that. What we need to do is on line 22, we need to say assert equals. And this is expected, then actual. So the cucumber is going to tell us what is expected. That's in arc1. And then actual is going to come from calling game.score.
So you're going to use an approval testing technique of giving it a bullshit expected answer to see what it's actually going to give you. Is that what you're doing?
I'm not. Game.score should be a function call, Brian.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm not doing that at all, Bob. I'm truly trying to drive this out because, and the reason that I took a backpedal on line 17 is because the score should naturally start at 0-0, right? And so what we're trying to get out of this is, it says love, but since we've amended this to take into account 2 scores instead of 1, I think we should go back to the feature file and make that love-all on line 21.
Because that would actually be
Eddie,
how it would be said.
Yeah.
Why do we have a when in there at all? In other words, when you start a new game of tennis, you don't need to have any event beyond that to have a score of love all.
That is true.
Yeah, I understand that, and in fact, if you watch George, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing the minimum to do nothing.
Well, but my point is that the product owner is not going to say the score is 0 or even 0-0. The product owner is going to say, we start a new game, the score is love all.
Good point. Yeah. So your point is we could kill line 20.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which, go ahead.
Which is even simpler.
So let's run that test. Did you run it?
Can I just ask, because I'm just a lowly developer, do you need the step definition here?
Do we need 14 to 18?
Do you need that step definition?
I'm okay with you killing it because we're not using it right now. We're going to need something later, but we don't need it right now.
And it might be different.
Very good, George. You missed the semicolon.
Oh, yeah. It was syntactically correct.
Statement terminators.
Just use prettier.
Lynching and cybercoders.
Okay, so what this is telling us is, so we don't have a tennis game, so can we please create that?
And this is a very intentional outcome in as much as we are asserting the future before it exists so that we are forcing code into existence. For those who are not familiar with test first as a practice.
It's going to be a string.
And if you want to make this test pass, we should probably delete this method.
Or just change it.
Well, because we're repurposing the feature file and the step definition file, this is dead code. And what do we do with dead code?
Delete it.
All right. All right. So did that get us to green? Did that get us to red?
It should be red. It should be very, very red.
I think it's yellow.
I think it's yellow.
Because it'll say you're calling a method that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we'll just give that a silly implementation.
I wouldn't have deleted the method not being a Java coder. I would have modified it. It's any of the syntax right there for you.
Well, this is an excellent point.
It's easier to write what you need.
We don't want it to be static. It needs to return a string. Looks good.
Takes 2 arguments. Is that what you want?
Doesn't take any arguments.
Wait, what? Hang on. What was the method name? So we got game.score, right?
Yep.
Okay. Score. No arguments. Stop it.
The cursor will almost always actually be higher than what you think it is.
Yeah. It's weird.
And in common TDD fashion, let's just return null from this.
Null?
Yes.
Intentionally making it go red.
I suggest an empty string instead.
I'm okay with that also.
Yeah, I'd be happier with an empty string. I don't like nulls. Nulls are evil.
Well, especially since that's the preferred data type.
It's going to be there for 5 seconds. Maybe 10 because the test runs slow here. Public class. So you did not rename the file?
Yes. To max.
Java cares about that.
Java's weird.
Java's old.
It is old.
It's actually really is old. Did that work? Did that get us to red?
For what it's worth, you can hit Alt-T, Brian, and it'll run it.
Okay, that got us to red.
Woohoo! That feels almost as good as a green.
And
but we know why it's failing, right?
Yeah, so can we go to tennis game and then score between those empty parentheses, just say love space dash space all.
Or copy it right from the test. Give it what it wants.
Yeah, that would be the better way.
Standard out, maybe. That too. That'll work. We all struggle with that.
Do we want it in the return? Is that where it goes?
Simplest thing that could possibly work. Woohoo! Great job. Great job, Brad.
Green. We have something kind of functional.
No, it's definitely not.
That was my whole goal.
Yeah, not that kind of function.
Okay, gang, perfect. We're back to green. Bob, I'm going to make a couple suggestions. Let's get some new faces around. No offense, Eddie, I love you. Brian, I love you, but I know you guys. I don't want to be on anymore. I don't want you guys to be on anymore. Let's get some rotation. George, I know you got some good perspectives. You've hinted in along the way. Maybe we can get you in the mix, or just grab our next collection of folks that are out there. But let's do what we can to mix it up a little bit. And then Bob, just to wrangle us back here, your guidance here of BDD. What are we after, and learning the right things around BDD tonight, as opposed to hearing us consultants get into some of our nuanced conversations that we might sometimes get into. So I'm going to call out the honest. Sometimes I get us astray, and I think I did it myself even earlier. Bob, what do you think we should do to yeah, get me out of there? Who else can we get out of there? Who else can we bring in? And let's get some new thought perspective to learn more about BDD.
So I'm voting for George to be brought in as Daniel's replacement. Daniel, that doesn't mean I don't appreciate what you're saying. I'm very much
Oh,
exactly
now I spoke up. You want to kick me out? I see how it works.
Well, actually, you asked the right question, and my objective is to get to the point where we have some repetition in the scenarios, so that we can start doing something else known as a scenario outline, which I know that Brian is aware of. So
Awesome.
I'm going to step out in order to allow someone to be a new face, and I'll just put it from the wings.
So
yeah, absolutely.
So I got a good idea from Canton Coders. So love you to death, Brian and Eddie, but maybe you could join on the Twitch stream, get people bop out of the Zoom meeting and join on the Twitch stream, so we just get more faces and we're not tempted to hit on mute. That might get more people involved, because at Canton Coders we're inclusive of everyone.
Well, yeah, that's wonderful, but do you want to follow any sane mobbing practice, Joel?
It's less about mobbing than it is about beating.
Sanity is overrated.
Yeah, it's about BDD tonight.
Okay.
I think Ramona should drive.
I think Ramona would be a good addition, and I'd like to get Camille in there if we can. So.
I'm game.
Location.
So where do we want to stick Ramon? And Ramon's there. Where do we want Camille? We put George
right after James.
Okay.
They want to get some inertia.
What is your last name, Camille? I'm sorry.
Bell.
Bell.
All righty. Do you
you're trying to get rid of me.
I can't create a video here.
How about we do this? How does that work?
Where'd I go?
Camille, does that work for you?
I'm driving. Fine with me.
They're trying to get rid of me, and I want to put somebody in that knows this kata, and I think that you do.
Eddie,
I've done the kata, not recently.
Eddie, the word's not get rid of. We still need your computer.
Yeah, we can't get rid of you.
Speaking of which, how do I take over from his?
Up at the top, there's view options, and then select request remote control.
Got it. On here. Got it. Okay.
Once you do that, Camille, you're going to need to click on the screen with your mouse, and that will actually take control. Yep, you got it.
Okay, I've got it. All right, what you want me to do?
So just real quick off the top, let's change the feature name to match what we're doing, which is, like Canton Coders Play Tennis or something inside the feature file.
Oh, okay. Where are we?
It says, it says feature hitchhiker playing Scrabble.
Oh, yes, that's a terrible name.
Yeah, a really good tip is to always use line numbers when you're directing the driver.
Oh, yep. Sorry about that. Line 4. Yep.
And is there isn't any way to make the line numbers a little bit more visible, is there?
No.
Whoops. Excuse me. I've lost more than I intended to.
And then while she's typing that, guys, so my feeling is that we have a very cheap test at this point, and we want to make sure that all scores that are less than 3 are equal to or described as love all, right? Is that a good next step?
Yes, I'd like to get us to where we can start to have some repetition. And the first 3 levels of play will give us that.
Okay.
All scores less than what?
Oh no, the feature is with the feature. I think we should call Canton coders, right? Play
Oh,
tennis.
Fine. Well,
Yeah,
wait a minute.
yep.
Canton Coders tennis, please.
Yep.
Yeah, what he's getting at is just additional scenarios.
Yep.
Plays tennis.
Here's,
Play tennis.
sure, play tennis. Got it.
All right.
Okay.
So then we can add a new scenario.
All righty.
All right.
Hang on. All right. What do we want our new scenario to be?
So I'm thinking the scenario is when the first player scores, or when
Okay.
player one scores,
Okay.
or just player one scores. It doesn't have to say when, but player one scores, or the score changes.
No, change is a little too vague, don't you think?
The score is less than 3.
Actually, I kind of like the way you had it the first time. When player one scores, and then
Yeah, I
you
like that
make
too.
that the first of
Okay.
Is
the 2 numbers.
that okay? Player one
Yep.
scoring?
When player one scores.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So then it's
it doesn't-
given, then, when, then, right? So given that player one has scored.
Okay.
You can keep that one the way it is and just do a when to say.
Oh, yes, let's do that.
Okay. Don't worry about the given.
Okay.
All right. So when.
Player one scores for the first time, or just yes.
Say when player one scores, and if the given is retained exactly as it was above, you have a new game, which means 0-0. And player one scores, which now means it will be one.
Okay.
What's the correct terminology? George, you're the subject matter expert on tennis scoring and the way it's articulated.
It's still love all, isn't it? Because it's love before 3 points.
No, love all means that that it's 0-0.
Okay.
Love is a nothing.
Yeah, 0 is represented as love. All means that both players have the same score.
Okay. So then if it's would it then be 1 to 1 love?
It's never called 1. It's called love and 15, which is odd. I know.
Love.
Okay.
No, it'd be 15 love. But I would, rather than saying player one, I think you should say when the server scores.
I'd
Okay.
stay
More accurate for tennis lingo. Yeah, when the server scores.
I'd really stay away from that because we're not trying to do blow by blow. We're scoring at a point in time.
Except that the score is expressed with the server score first. Right?
And so it's okay. All right.
Which isn't in the directions, to be honest, but that is the way tennis is articulated, is said out loud.
And
my only concern about that is the server changes, right? So,
yeah, server changes. It gets very confusing.
And I've not seen the kata done with concern about the servers being represented first, but you guys are doing it, not me.
I've never done that either. So what do we put in here?
Okay.
So then instead of player one, should it be server A, server B?
No, absolutely.
It doesn't matter here.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's okay like it is.
Navigate.
So, okay. So now we run.
Run?
Now,
We
the
run the
navigator
test.
makes the choice. The navigator is allowed to fulfill his wish, and then we can change it if we decide it's that important.
The person, the product owner that understands tennis can change it when they're the navigator.
Okay. So
Okay.
we have a couple of.
Yep. We need to implement the missing steps.
So that is a new step.
Yep.
Yep.
Actually.
We copy that and go to the tennis step.
Yeah. Well, excuse me. I was going to copy more than that. Don't. And
Yep. Tennis step def.
That's tennis step def.
And then we put that online.
It's a win, right?
Yep.
That's correct.
No, but we're right in the middle there of
That's right where it belongs,
Existing.
given, when, then, in that order.
So there's more than one way to set up a Cucumber file. Some people put all the whens in one place. How does one indent this stuff, or just never mind?
Hit tab.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, highlight and then tab, right?
The whole thing. You can select a range and tab the whole range together.
And don't forget to get rid of the pending exception.
Yeah, I'm working on that. Okay, I think I need squiggly bracket there. All righty.
Right. So
there's that. Then there's the then.
Yep.
Another
we can run it though. We can run the test and then it'll spit us out the then and give us
go.
another error. Yep. Oh.
Described. Okay, so
26.
Yeah, let me go back to
24.
24.
Oh, we're missing an open on both.
Something. What am I missing?
Not line 19.
Oh, have I got too many?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Kill that one.
And line 18 shouldn't have a semicolon.
Oh, you're right.
This is Java, not JavaScript.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Run again.
Try it again.
And it should give us the. Huh? It didn't offer us the then.
Just look for a less than sign. That's how it grabs the efforts. Oh, right there.
Here.
Line 23.
Line 23, comparison failure, expected 15 love, but was love all. Okay.
Okay. Ah.
All right. So we need a matching then that is 15 love, right?
Maybe we don't. Let's go back and look.
If you have a new game.
No, we don't.
Oh. The problem is one player scores is empty.
Yep.
Yep.
Doesn't do anything.
We need.
Yep.
And so I'm guessing we need to do something with game here, and we need to pass it something, right? So
yeah, I think they had it earlier, right? The game.score.
So, let's say, for instance, on line 18, you were to collect the resulting string from having called game.score, having given it a scores method, as in a player scores. In other words, the verb scores.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Use that collected on 18. You use that as the on line 25 is the actual that you got from above.
Okay, so we should player one scores. But we need to pass it something. How does it know? It doesn't.
Okay, you only score 1 point at a time. So you say if score is being treated as a verb, which it isn't right now, I think it's being treated as a getter. Just say that it is going to return an integer, which is the current score for have a player one, player two kind of thing. So that becomes problematic. But that's a different thing. The idea is, and now you'll notice up on line 7, we have sort of a leftover from the code we were given.
Yeah, you want to answer here?
So I think we want to go ahead and reuse that name, or maybe we call it actual or something because it's a better name.
Well, actual is a better name. Sure. Let's call it actual, and I'll fix the thing upstairs, up there. And change
Right.
that to actual. Hello, come back here. All right.
Semicolon at the end.
Oh, yes, right.
Yep.
Is this
Game
more
dot
like
score.
what you want?
That's more like what I envisioned, and then you can actually examine on the right-hand side actual. Now this is got all kinds of holes in it, but it's going to get us to where we're actually looking at something as if it came from code.
Okay. How about the arg1 name? That's really an awful name.
Oh, I agree. That should probably be expected.
Okay.
Yep.
Double clicking works. That
Oop.
doesn't.
Except without the arg part.
Yep.
All right. Does that look
Okay,
good?
so what do we think happens when we run this? The score's still gonna be 0, right?
Yeah, it's still going to fail.
Yep.
But it'll fail in a better way.
Yeah, it'll fail in a better way. It'll fail. It'll lead us in the right direction.
Incompatible types. Game score is a string, not an int. So we have to change that.
Good point. Let's go back here.
On line 18.
18.
Actually, that is pretty
No,
much.
line 7.
Line 7.
We actually declare it. You're right. That's
String.
it's really hard to put the word love into an int.
That better?
Yep.
Where
And now it'll
Yep.
fail again because
for
it's
the right reason.
love all. Yep.
Should expect.
Woohoo!
Yeah, love all, but was null.
And so why do we have no? Maybe because that method doesn't return anything, or what? Line 18.
Go look.
And
Where is game? There's game.
Yep. No, it says to return love all. Public class tennis game. So let's go back to our step definition. We must have missed something there.
There's something.
New tennis game.
Is the method score in our tennisgame.java? We are calling the score method. It returns a string type, because it would bark at us if it didn't.
Where's game used? Okay, actual game.score.
Mm-hmm.
Tennis game.
So we're using the same game, right?
Yeah.
Game is the instance of the tennis game class.
Right.
Instantiate on line 12, and then we use it on line 18.
Oh, I know what the problem is. Where are we getting expected?
Right, nowhere.
Nowhere are we getting expected.
Line 18, it should be initialized. No. Oh, it's no expected.
Yes, it is. It's here. Okay, we do have that.
Oh, and actual is set on line 18 and used on line 25.
So go back to tennis game.
Okay, do we have a scoping problem?
So score returns love all, and
Yes.
we're using score. They should both be set to love all, because we're using that for both actual and. Is that a problem though, that we're instantiating it twice?
Well, wait a moment.
Or setting it twice?
Expect null, was that its problem?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the feature and see what we think it.
When player 1 scores.
Uh-huh.
When player 1 scores. Should we have when player 1 scores 1 point? Should we be more explicit in the when?
I'm sorry, I spoke over you. What did you say?
Should is it enough to say when player one scores, or should we say when player one scores a point or 1 point?
Actually, can we look at the output to see which of these two tests is failing?
Yeah.
A good point.
We might have wrecked something that used to work.
Ah, okay.
The
Output.
Yeah, STD out. Yeah, so it's when the match has just started. We wrecked that. That's failing on line 18.
Oh,
That's what it's complaining about.
not complaining about the second one.
Yeah, because basically we gave the second one what it wanted, and we destroyed what the first one was previously getting. So let's look at how we handle that first.
So the second one works. It says it's expected 15 love and was love all. The first one fails where it says expected love all but was null.
Okay, so yeah, you're right. It's just I hate.
Well, the second one fails in the right way. The first one fails in the wrong way.
Right. I don't understand what we did to the first one.
Well, let's go look.
This isn't usually so.
Oh, well.
We only ever return one possible thing, and when we've got two tests, that probably doesn't work when we have the same then step doing the same thing.
Right. So how can we make them sequential?
Could we look at the step defs for a moment?
Sure.
The then is exactly the same in each case.
So so actual is null, is what's null.
Oh,
in the first one.
Because there is no when in the first scenario.
So when you create actual.
Oh, gotcha. We need.
Well, actual, in line 24 and a half, you need to say actual equals game.score. That doesn't belong in line 18.
It belongs in 24 and a half.
Okay. All righty.
Yeah,
oh.
Retrieving the score has nothing to do with scoring.
Right. So in line 18, should we be incrementing the score?
Well, eventually we should.
Line 18 should be saying something like game dot player one score, player one scores or something. It should be delegating to the game so that the game can know what the score is.
Okay. Well, should we run this now then and see now that we've changed that?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we at least
that should fix the first problem.
Reason. Good catch, George.
Okay.
So now we have to think about how we want the API to game to work.
Yeah. So is it time to rotate to someone else? I mean, we don't really have it as green, but somebody else should get a shot.
Yeah, and we have advanced it, so I'm fine if we want to rotate.
Okay.
I actually have to call the grandbabies and put them to bed, so I'm going to actually have to leave. I'm sorry, you guys.
Tell them good night for us.
I will. When is the next meeting?
22nd, didn't he say?
Okay.
Yep.
Wow,
all right.
That is the greatest setup I've ever had in my life. Do you read the news on TV? The next meetup is next Wednesday because of the pandemic. No one else has to do. And no one else has anything to do. And we're going to be doing Kotlin and Java, test-driven FizzBuzz at the same time. And I see George is about to fall off his chair when he heard me say that. So tune in. What?
Okay.
So Camille, picture this. if you don't know Java, but you know Kotlin, we'll be test driving FizzBuzz. So two IDEs at the same time, switching back and forth like a ping pong match.
Oh, but well, okay.
Okay, that might be a little too much for me.
It'll either be a beautiful train wreck or it'll be really good content, but we think people will watch.
I'm not sure I know how to spell Kotlin.
All right, thank you guys.
Yep. And in the meantime,
who's driving and who's navigating next?
Real quick time check, and then I'll go back to mute. It's 8:50. Happy to keep going as long as possible. Eddie is our constraint. If Eddie shuts his computer, we're dead in the water.
Yeah, so don't do that, Eddie.
So Eddie, is Eddie even awake?
Well, people are controlling my computer, and you muted me in addition to me having my microphone muted. So it took me a second to be able to talk.
Eddie, come back off of mute. So we'll go as long as Eddie wants to go. We may drop off of Twitch here shortly, but we have 20 viewers. So Twitch stream, what do you think? Should we Should we keep going or not? I'm gonna go on mute again. Keep going. And Gugu, you look like you have a star on your face.
I'm watching you guys, so it's totally fine with me. Whatever the mop wants to do.
I'm in favor of bringing in a fresh face. We had quite a number of them identified previously.
Mm-hmm.
We still have, Camille is on already. Matthew Clayson, are you there? Because Ramona has just stepped away, and that's the end of the list I've got.
I'm here.
Okay, would you like to join them up?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Who was that?
This is Matt Clayson.
Matt Clayson.
We didn't like that.
C-L-A-S-E-N, yes.
Yeah.
You got it right.
It should go at the top, right?
Probably.
There we go. Let it rip.
So
Drive to get away.
who's navigating?
Looks like Brian.
What?
Did you guys get to green? Or did we decide that we change on red now?
You want to keep moving. We're actually making progress.
Yeah, it wasn't green, but it was progress.
We're doing that?
Am I driving?
Have you driven before?
Yeah, I've already driven once, so I'm fine with if somebody else wants to, like Matthew.
I think we take us off the list and bring in new people because we've already gone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
fine.
people have probably been watching, so it's probably fine at that point. At this point,
Yeah.
so that would drop in something like that.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Yeah. All new voices. I like it.
Okay.
All right.
We have
So-
6.
So we've got a failing test now. We're getting love all instead of 15.1. So I want to fix that and then do some refactoring because I think we've got a real mess here.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's go to tennis game.
Okay.
So we're returning love all the time here.
Great.
Wait a minute, we never know that somebody scored. Go to our step definition. When player 1 scores, let's put in let's call it game dot game dot point. So since score is already in.
Yeah, score the verb or score the noun.
So
So make that method.
yeah, just that,
Okay.
which we could run, or we can just go to tennis game and create the game dot point method.
Should I run? I guess I should run it real fast. Okay.
Good. It's
yelling at us about the right thing.
Okay. So
Public void.
create a new method.
Yeah.
Do you want it to return void or return current score or what?
This doesn't return anything. It's a void method.
Okay.
So what we want to do is let's say player one score. No, all lowercase. Plus equals 1. So we need to, up in tennis game, we need to declare an integer, an int.
Sorry.
It would be lowercase if it's primitive and.
Oh. Sorry, not a Java course. Player one score.
Equals 0. Okay.
Run it.
So to get to green quickly, in score, on line 6.5, say if player one score is equal to 1, then return 15 love.
You want to collect that, correct that to player one score instead of play one score.
That's good enough to go green?
Okay.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Okay, now let's go back to the feature file.
Am I still driving?
Now I want to do the refactoring.
Okay.
That's part of this. So we've been using Cucumber as a unit test framework here.
Yep.
And I would like to get it back to supporting behavior-driven development.
Okay.
As in speaking the language of the domain.
Right. So the second scenario, when player one scores, why don't we say when the first serve scores?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't change anything, so we don't need to run the test for that.
Okay.
But I would like to change the when to well, so the only person that can score in tennis is the server.
Is that, I don't know if that's true.
If they don't score, it switches to serve.
Right. The
There's
only
no
person
point scored.
who can score a point is the server, and if they don't score, then the serve changes.
You can score against the server.
Nope.
No.
No, you can't.
I'm pretty.
Yes, you can.
I'm pretty certain you can.
No, guys, that's table tennis.
Switch servers is when the person that's not serving scores against the server. That's when it switches.
That is correct for table tennis. That is not correct for tennis.
It is.
No, the serve switches.
I've played tennis in my life.
So let's talk about our terminology here, and make sure we're using the same terminology, because this has been part of the problem tonight. So as I understand it, that wouldn't be called scoring a point. but maybe I'm wrong there. But
It would be.
But if the server hits it out of the court, for example,
Right.
then the serve switches.
Right.
No, one person serves the entire game. It's only one person serves, and then they switch the next
If
game.
they go out, that would be a fault.
And this point would go to the
If they
receiver
serve
player.
a valid serve, then it gets returned, and then whoever wins the point wins the point.
Okay, so they serve the whole set.
One person serves the entire set.
Yeah, they
yes.
serve the set, but anyone can win the point. If they serve out of bounds, then that's a fault.
Okay, so why don't we say when the server scores.
I think it would be, okay, yeah, because we're looking at the overall score. So if the server scores, it'd be 15 love. When the non-server scores, it would be love 15.
Right, okay.
Right.
That's our second given under there.
Yeah. So I'm trying to do is get the English language description in the business terms.
Yes,
and
definitely.
the step definitions translate to our code.
Right.
Okay.
And when we let things like player one leak out, I've never heard that it said at a tennis
It's
match.
not a video game, it's a tennis match.
Right. we started off leaking out abstractions from our code rather than taking our business abstractions and then representing them in code.
We have 2 minutes remaining on our designated time and our watchers' patience. So what are we going to actually make happen here?
So if we run this, then it will now fail because we don't have the step definitions.
Right, but we're going to get, well, maybe. Undefined scenario, and there it is.
So let's go to the step definitions and change the name of that.
Okay.
Pull that in, please.
Are we copying this then?
You just need to copy the server scores.
34.
Got it.
Yeah, we don't need the whole thing. So we just need to change line 16 to the server scores.
16 to 18 should be that player one win server score.
Oh, how that got there. Oh, I did the wrong. Sorry. Okay. Let's change it.
Yep.
Is it when server scores?
I think it's the server scores.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And we could change the name of the method also.
Let's do one thing at a time and make it green.
Yeah.
And call Camille.
Baby steps.
We can think of that or whatever else makes sense.
Should we switch drivers or?
Well, let's finish this refactoring because
Okay.
we keep leaving stuff half done.
Okay.
So if we go back to the step definition, given my improved understanding of tennis, let's make it game.server point.
Okay.
To distinguish it from receiver point. And you know, I would normally do this as a rename refactor, and so it would change all the places. Let's go ahead and change it in tennis game also.
Okay.
Don't forget at the bottom of the step definition too.
Okay.
That's the only place we're using it.
Yeah, this is the current score, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We should be able to run this and still have a green test.
Do you like line 17, George?
No, I don't. But Camille wanted to do one change at a time.
Now we can fix that.
Okay.
Hey, you pounded baby steps into my brain, so I'm just pounding it.
Incremental change. Yep. I
Yeah,
agree.
that's fine. Server
All
scores.
George's fault.
Run it again.
And then we need, okay, we need to change that in the, we don't have to change anything.
Yeah, I think we're.
Just run the test.
Okay.
The way those function names come around is simply, or I should say method names come around, is as a gift from Cucumber by having camel cased the words it found. It doesn't
Okay.
really matter. It could be literal as a function.
So I'm way happier with this. If we look at tennisgame.java, I'm looking ahead and I'm expecting eventually that we'll have, a player 2 score, and then we may have something that indicates who's the server in this set. That could go into a data structure at some point, to make it easier. At some point, we'll be building those strings at the end by looking at the 2 scores.
Would we do something like passing in to score player 1 and player 2?
Well, it can just get to it. The game has a score.
Yep.
So it could do something like, would have an array of words, and it can convert from a numeric score to the word, but then also look, are the 2 the same? And it puts in all.
Yeah. If all we were trying to
instead of saying love,
George,
right?
If the only thing that we were trying to validate was the name or the articulation of a score, we could have done this really super simple. And the score is N to N.
Well, I would write that as a JUnit test.
The limitation here is that we can't do both JUnit and Cucumber at the same time with Cyber Dojo.
Describing with Cucumber has its limitations.
Right.
If we look at the feature,
because that's what the step definitions are actually written in. Look at the asserts.
So if we look at the feature, we might have, we could go a couple things. We could go do scenarios for, the server making every point until they win the game. That's one dimension. We could do another one where maybe another thing is when the first serve faults.
Actually, George, I like that idea a lot because it gets at something I've been wanting to get done is some repetition so we can actually show scenario outlines. And the theories you just suggested would do that very well.
Okay, so if you want to, if the purpose of this is to show off Cucumber mechanics, that's fine. Yep. If the purpose of this is to show off BDD, then that may not be the next step to take.
We would have to spend a great deal more time to talk about BDD in its purest sense. Would you agree to that?
A great deal more time. Why? Because you're going to argue with it?
No. Brian and I were side chatting about this a little bit, and it feels like, setting out what your scenarios are from a BDD perspective is like one layer of it. And then actually implementing those in the code using Cucumber is a second layer.
Yes.
And then if you were to test your entire application really well, the JUnit test would be the next step of that. And
Right.
it feels like we may be crossing here a little bit of the implementation of the test and the definition of the BDD, which makes it a little difficult to discuss one point or the other right now.
Just gonna pop in here real quick. It's 9:06. I'm happy to keep going, but it sounds like George, Dana, anyone involved, we could do another dive into BDD at another time. I don't think the pandemic will be over
in
the next 2 weeks.
Probably not.
So I'll hit you guys up on Slack. But
Well, guys,
we'll keep going as long as Eddie keeps his computer open and I stay awake.
I probably have to drop soon, but I got to say I have actually learned a tremendous amount, and I would love to continue this at some point.
Yeah.
I think maybe a target of like defining a BDD feature file as one exercise, and then implementing that feature file as a second exercise, separate.
It sounds
would
like
be interesting sessions, because I feel like there's too much going on here all at once to really show those separations, as Bob was kind of pointing out. Are we doing BDD or are we implementing Cucumber?
I wouldn't read out the feature file. What I would do is do an example mapping.
Right, yeah.
And then use that to inform building the feature file one example at a time.
Exactly.
And we could decide which order we wanted, but we would have already identified what the scenarios are that we're going to need.
Man, right. maybe we can pick a kata too that's like not. I didn't realize how not ubiquitous tennis was, but I honestly don't understand it at all.
Hey, I have a recommendation. Why don't everyone that's interested in doing BDD Part 2 jump into Slack in the next week and figure out what they want to present? Because, like I said, Wednesday night seems to be a night we can draw at least 30 viewers, and it's fun. If you guys are interested.
So my suggestion is that we come back to the tennis game, but let's, instead of jumping into right to Cucumber, let's do an example mapping session, and that's enough for a night.
That's
right. Exactly. I think that's where we kind of like just cut it, and then we were trying to figure out too much as we're trying to write Cucumber.
Exactly.
To get this done.
I like it. We just accept that it's going to be a multi-part thing, and we do the example mapping the first time, then the Cucumber, and then try and implement.
And we can save this URL and come back to this code. It's okay.
There's yet another perspective on this that may or may not be valuable to this group. And I know when we're doing TDD, when Bob and I started pairing, he reminded me that step 0 is to think. And that translates into doing design, right? So as I hear George talking about the example mappings, right? What I hear when you say that, George, is you're saying here are some scenarios that we'd like to turn into things, but looking at it from like a top-down perspective. And understanding like why we would choose those, how we would order those, and things along those lines. We could do that iteratively, but it's so easy for us as developers, especially. I've found I do this myself, and the people I coach have this problem too. I think it's a human problem, at least a developer problem. We want to get to coding, right? We want to get to coding. And so we don't necessarily always, when we get to the top of the loop, we don't always stop and think.
Well, and so we jump to coding in the gherkin.
You know, one of there's a list of things I have, a very short list of reasons why teams can't execute continuous delivery. And one of those is that they jump to coding before they understand what it is they are coding. Yep. And when we work with teams, we focus really heavily on the process of BDD, not the implementation of tests, but defining stories as testable acceptance criteria so that they know what they are coding, so that they can actually execute CI and then execute CD.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly useful tool for that.
Same.
So I just put a link in the chat.
Brian and George. Brian. Would you be open to the following? How about we identify someone who actually knows tennis? And
good luck with that.
Oh, customer problem.
I'm sure we can Google the actual rules, so we don't have to argue about it.
So that's what we were missing tonight, was a product owner who understood the tennis requirements.
Well, I think Dana
what I'm proposing is we do exactly what Free Amigos would do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You make notes in tentative gherkin.
So Bob, will you let me finish? Because
I'm sorry.
this is what I'm proposing. So I don't think we need to go out and get a star tennis player to do this. What I'm suggesting, though, is that we practice with example mapping first to identify what the scenarios are, and if we get time, we can start doing some formulation of those scenarios, but not, maybe not even trying to implement them yet, but formulating the gherkin in ways that are natural from the business perspective, not trying to write step definitions.
Right. So you're suggesting a story writing workshop.
Hey, well, we gotta stay with coding. Hey, don't you use that word. We're coding here, there already. Like, we don't need any of that agile stuff in here. We're coders. But
that's the root of BDD.
Hey, so
you're a developer now. Just owning a story are part of your job, or I'll smack you.
Just a question.
One of the things that I work on teams with is that I'm a developer. I like to code. Coding is fun. Coding is dessert.
Dessert, exactly.
The work is breaking down the work to know what it is we want.
Speaking of dessert, and I'm going to try to segue this one.
Too.
So
example mapping is fun too, once you start trying to do it.
So speaking of dessert, that usually comes at the end. Our viewers are plummeting right now. Like, what I wanted to do is thank Bob Allen, who has the most spectacular background I've ever seen. Bob, thank you for putting this together, and this is not how we thought this would ever go. Bob and I thought this would be done in a library.